Welcome to Atlanta, a city once shining with lights and full of opportunities, but today is shrouded by a terrible shadow. Are you ready to step into the dark corners that few dare to look straight into? Amid the hustle and bustle, fentanyl, a white powder cheaper than heroin and easier to find than any other addictive substance, is infiltrating every alleyway, under every bridge, and even the makeshift camps on sidewalks. Just a few grains smaller than a pencil tip are enough to take a life. The brightly colored pills like candy are the perfect mask, turning Atlanta's streets into a nightmare you cannot wake up from. This was once the economic heart of the American South, where music, sports, and culture intertwined, where thousands of immigrants and people from across states came to start anew with a reasonable cost of living. But now, a population of more than 500,000, over 6 million in the metro area, must witness a bitter reality. The homeless population has nearly doubled compared to before the pandemic. They are women, families with children, veterans, elderly people, the disabled, all caught in the spiral of soaring housing prices, where one-bedroom rents have surpassed $1,500 per month and two-bedroom nearly $1,800. The gap between housing supply and demand is like an invisible trap, pushing more and more people onto the streets every day. Do you still think Atlanta is a land of promise? Watch until the end of this video, because the truth may make you never see this city the same way again. Beneath the sparse old trees and flickering streetlights of Atlanta, a deadly but invisible threat is creeping into every breath of the city: fentanyl. This white powder is not just a drug, it is a death sentence in an extremely sophisticated form. Originally created to serve a noble medical purpose, to relieve pain for terminal cancer patients, fentanyl carries terrifying power, 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. But once it leaves the hospital and falls into the hands of drug dealers, it instantly transforms into a cold chemical weapon, capable of knocking people down in seconds, mercilessly and without warning. In the illegal drug market, fentanyl is considered the strategic product of criminals, cheaper than heroin, easy to produce, easy to transport, but with devastating destructive power. Just a few grains, smaller than a pencil tip, can cause a healthy adult to collapse permanently. The high feeling it provides comes as quickly as a lightning bolt in clear skies, but also vanishes in a flash, forcing users into a brutal and ruthless cycle of addiction fiercer than any other drug. This is not just an addiction. It is a desperate race between brief euphoria and the shadow of death standing right beside. Walking along Peachtree Street, once Atlanta's bustling commercial artery, it is now not difficult to encounter haunting scenes. A young man, barely out of youth, with crumpled clothes and vacant eyes, slumps on the steps. An elderly woman lies motionless beside a brightly graffitied wall. Many deaths occur right on the spot, amid honking sirens and the indifferent gazes of passersby. Subsequent investigations show the cause was not just pure fentanyl use, but fake pills containing enough fentanyl to kill dozens of people. They were colorful hues like candy, a cruel visual deception, making buyers completely unable to distinguish real from fake. This tragedy is not a single story. From 2021 to 2022 alone, the U.S. recorded tens of thousands of overdose deaths, most linked to fentanyl or other synthetic opioids. Those numbers are not just medical reports, they are real lives, families, dreams buried in cold body bags. And in Atlanta, the epicenter is sweeping hardest through the homeless community, those already living on the fringes of society, now pushed even further away from survival chances. For them, fentanyl sometimes feels like a fleeting escape from a harsh reality. The biting cold of winter cutting through skin, the humid heat of summer making breath heavy, and relentless physical pain. Just a small dose is enough to temporarily forget hunger, the roaring cars on the highway, and the cold stares of passersby. But the price to pay is horrific. Bodies weaken faster, immune systems collapse, and the risk of death lurks with every breath. Fentanyl is not just a chemical. It is a catalyst that accelerates every form of deterioration. It digs deep into unhealed emotional wounds, turning makeshift camps into nests of disease and violence. The tents made from torn tarps, pitched under bridges or beside vacant lots, hold not only trash and syringes but also despair and fear. Every overdose there takes not only a life but also sows a sense of helplessness among those left behind, those who know that tomorrow it could be their turn. Atlanta, with all its neon lights, brightly lit stadiums, and echoing hip-hop beats, is now forced to face a harsh reality. Fentanyl and the homelessness crisis are no longer two separate problems. They intertwine, nourish, and amplify each other. One side provides temporary escape from suffering. The other creates the perfect environment for this poison to spread. And in between, the people, once with jobs, families, and dreams, are being swept off the map of survival. If this spiral is not stopped, Atlanta will lose not only its most vulnerable citizens, but also its very soul. The soul that once made this city a symbol of uplift, opportunity, and faith in tomorrow. Within Atlanta's homeless community, fentanyl is not merely a drug, it is a haunting shadow, seeping into every tarp-covered tent, every breath at night, and every untold story. The people here, already living on the edge of existence, are being drawn even deeper into the vortex of a poison so potent that just a few grains smaller than a pencil tip can end a life. Nearly half of Atlanta's homeless population has no stable shelter. They move like shadows through neighborhoods, pitching temporary tents under bridges or seeking abandoned plots to spend the night. More than a quarter are women, those who must battle addiction while also guarding against every gaze, every threat of violence and harassment. Most heartbreaking of all, hundreds of families with children still live outdoors, where the sounds of highway traffic mingle with the whistle of wind through torn tarps, and innocent eyes learn to fall asleep amid noise and unease. Winter in Atlanta sometimes arrives with sudden, piercing cold snaps, with winds like blades cutting through worn-out clothes. Summer turns the entire city into a giant furnace, so hot and humid that even breathing becomes heavy. In these harsh conditions, many people's shelter is nothing more than a torn tarp, some stained cardboard, or a thin, faded blanket. Hastily constructed tents made from plywood, tied together with ropes, cannot keep out leaking rain or gusty winds, but at least offer the illusion that they still have a home, fragile enough that a single nighttime storm could sweep it all away. Access to medical services and addiction treatment programs is like climbing a thorny slope. The current number of detox beds only meets a tiny fraction of demand, while waiting lists stretch for weeks, even months. The rate of licensed counselors is far too low, making every attempt to seek help a gamble on luck. For fentanyl addicts, the risk of relapse is nearly certain when wait times drag on, and each day of delay means a new risk of death. Even when people find shelter beds, many are rejected for failing to meet common rules, such as requirements to be fully sober or to present complete identification. For those caught in the fentanyl spiral, these conditions become nearly insurmountable barriers. Safety strictness, rather than opening the door to salvation, inadvertently becomes a no-entry sign hanging right in front of those who need help most. As options narrow, makeshift camps continue to sprout like scars across Atlanta's map. From the Gulch, a large vacant lot in the city center, to beneath the I-75/I-85 highways and along streets around the commercial district, tents of all colors crowd together. They are patched from plastic tarps, plywood, and any materials found. Between the narrow pathways lie piles of trash, a dank smell rising mixed with the acrid odor of burning plastic and the sharp sting of discarded needles. Every step here demands vigilance, not only because of the risk of stepping on sharp objects, but also because any small conflict can escalate into violence. These makeshift camps are not only signs of poverty, but also fertile ground for the spread of infectious diseases. In cramped, unsanitary spaces, bacteria and viruses easily proliferate, from hepatitis and respiratory illnesses to skin infections. Just one untreated sick person poses an inevitable risk of contagion to the entire camp. And when hospitals are overwhelmed, severe cases often end with a direct trip to the morgue. For each individual in this community, every day is a battle. In the morning, they struggle to find some food, sometimes scavenging from dumpsters behind restaurants or gas stations. In the afternoon, they seek ways to escape the harsh sun or avoid sudden rain showers. At night, they must stay alert enough not to become victims of theft or violence. And throughout the day, fentanyl addiction lurks like an unending whisper in their minds, urging them to seek the next dose. The presence of fentanyl within the homeless community is not just a factor worsening poverty, it is a catalyst accelerating collapse. It steals health, destroys human relationships, and turns makeshift camps into inescapable whirlpools. Every overdose here not only takes a life, but also leaves deep psychological wounds on those around, those who know that sooner or later, death may come for them too. Atlanta, with all its dazzling neon lights, lively stadiums, and rich cultural heritage, now faces a stark truth. The fentanyl crisis and homelessness do not exist separately. They entwine, nurture each other, and together drag the city down. In the tight embrace of these two storms, people who once had homes, jobs, dreams, now cling to only one thing: the fragile hope that they will still be alive to see the sun rise tomorrow. The fallout from Atlanta's fentanyl and homelessness crisis does not stop at the makeshift tents under bridges or streets littered with needles. It silently spreads, destroying the city's healthcare, economic, and social foundations. In hospitals, ambulances rushing fentanyl overdose patients into emergency rooms has become an everyday occurrence. Doctors and nurses race against every second, administering antidotes, resuscitating, trying to save lives from pale bodies with broken breaths. But they are not always fast enough. And even when a patient escapes death's grasp, a cascade of other issues follows: HIV exposure from dirty needles, hepatitis, respiratory illnesses from long-term living in damp environments, or abscess infections from repeated injections. This pressure exhausts an already strained healthcare system, depleting scarce hospital beds and fragile resources at a rapid pace. The impact is not confined to hospitals, but spills into economic life as well. Many once bustling commercial areas now lose customers. Storefronts that once shone brightly now face images of makeshift camps right outside, with the smell of trash and smoke mingling, deterring customers from entering. Tourists, a significant source of revenue, also avoid these areas, causing sharp drops in income. Some events are canceled. Many small businesses are forced to close due to lost clientele and security concerns. The city has repeatedly launched campaigns to clear out tents and trash to restore the face of the streets. Yet the results are only temporary. Within days, new tents reappear, sometimes right where the previous ones were cleared. Meanwhile, Atlanta's social services are struggling under severe overload. Shelters are full, waiting lists are long, community health clinics and soup kitchens operate at full capacity but remain insufficient. Social support personnel, from healthcare workers to psychological counselors, are in short supply. To ensure safety and manage resources, many programs impose strict rules, such as requiring identification documents, drug tests, or full participation in counseling sessions. But these conditions inadvertently exclude a large portion of those most in need. Someone might be missing just one certificate or fail a drug test, and thus lose the chance for shelter in the cold winter. All of this creates a vicious cycle where the more people fall into hardship, the more overwhelmed the services become. When services cannot keep up, many are left behind, homeless, without medical support, without a means to survive. Abandoned, they are even more susceptible to falling into fentanyl addiction, more prone to severe illness, and the spiral tightens once again. It is a ruthless machine that continuously devours the vulnerable, while further fracturing the structure of a city once proud of its vitality and potential. Today, Atlanta is witnessing clearly that the fentanyl crisis and homelessness are not just two parallel issues, but two toxic streams merging, amplifying their destructive power exponentially. And when these consequences have spread into healthcare, the economy, and the very social foundation, standing aside as a bystander is no longer an option, because every day of delay brings the city closer to a breaking point that may be beyond repair. In 2024, Atlanta's authorities introduced a series of new regulations aimed at restricting homeless encampments in public areas. Underpasses, parks, and sidewalks that once sheltered hundreds have now become no camping zones. Police forces and municipal teams were empowered to clear these areas immediately, along with penalties such as fines or even short-term imprisonment. Within just a few months, dozens of arrests occurred, alongside images of tents being dismantled, trash collected, and streets returned to the community. Official reports stated this was a necessary step to improve sanitation, maintain order, and ensure safety in public spaces. However, behind these numbers and declarations lies a wave of considerable controversy. Human rights organizations, social activists, and many citizens argue that these measures amount to criminalizing poverty. Instead of addressing the root causes of homelessness, the authorities are punishing the state of having no home. People already on society's margins are forced to abandon their makeshift shelters, wandering in search of new spots, often in remote areas out of public view. But these places harbor even greater dangers: violence, crime, and worse living conditions than before. Alongside enforcement measures, the city also announced some support plans to ease public concern. Some dilapidated inns were refurbished into affordable housing, and temporary housing programs were expanded to accommodate more homeless individuals. On paper, this signals progress, but reality paints a far less optimistic picture. Many projects are delayed for months, even years, due to complicated bureaucracy or lack of funds. The number of completed affordable units meets only a tiny fraction of the enormous and growing demand. Meanwhile, Atlanta's real estate market continues to soar uncontrollably. Rent prices rise faster than incomes, putting even families not involved with drugs or vices at risk of losing their homes. With one-bedroom rents surpassing $1,500 per month and two bedrooms nearing $1,800, a single event, job loss, illness, or emergency expense can immediately push many into homelessness. This means that beyond those who are already living on the streets, a growing number of ordinary families are drifting toward the fragile border of homelessness. As a result, the gap between the speed of clearing out and the speed of building grows ever wider. Clearing campaigns happen quickly, forcefully, and continuously, while support projects progress slowly and in dribs and drabs. Between these opposing flows lies a dangerous void where thousands of people are trapped, homeless, unstable, and unsure of what tomorrow will bring. For them, every night is just another wait for dawn to start the search anew for a temporary shelter, and each day brings them a step further away from the chance of returning to normal life. In the eyes of many, homelessness is often associated with heavy stereotypes: laziness, irresponsibility, or self-inflicted despair. The image of people sleeping on sidewalks, begging for money, is simply and harshly interpreted as unwillingness to work or giving up on normal life. Yet the reality in Atlanta is far more complex and layered than that. Most of the homeless people here have sought support. They have come to assistance centers, filled out applications for shelters, registered for rental assistance programs, or looked for jobs. But that journey often encounters nearly insurmountable barriers. Waiting times are too long, sometimes up to months, causing the chance to stabilize their lives to slip away before they can grasp it. Many lack valid identification documents, and obtaining replacements while homeless is nearly impossible. Others cannot prove income, a requirement that support programs consider mandatory, even though they once had stable jobs before life took a different turn. The most vulnerable groups are those society should protect best: veterans who serve the country, single mothers struggling to raise young children, disabled people unable to perform heavy labor, or patients with chronic illnesses requiring long-term care. For them, barriers are not only procedural or financial, but also health-related, mental exhaustion, and sometimes a lack of patience from those holding decision-making power. The root causes of this situation lie more in systemic factors than individual ones. Rent prices in Atlanta rise much faster than average incomes, making it unaffordable even for employed people. Stagnant wages, fiercely competitive labor markets, alongside weak healthcare and mental health service systems, create heavy pressure. When a crisis occurs, job loss, illness, divorce, breakdown happens quickly, and the path from having a home to homelessness is much shorter than many think. Therefore, homelessness in Atlanta is largely not an individual choice, but the result of an intertwined network of causes, economic, policy, and public health related. Seen this way, the question is no longer, why don't they just get up? But rather, why does the system allow them to fall in the first place? Only by changing this perspective does the city have a chance to approach the problem with understanding and real solutions, instead of decades-old prejudices. Today, Atlanta is not only grappling with cold numbers on homelessness and fentanyl, but also vividly reflecting the widespread crisis across America. Here, issues once thought separate are tightly interwoven. Sky-high housing prices rising much faster than average incomes. Stagnant wages making it difficult even for full-time workers to maintain a roof over their heads. A severe shortage of mental health services both in personnel and infrastructure. And finally, synthetic drugs, especially fentanyl, creeping into every neighborhood, turning the city's dark corners into invisible battlefields between life and death. If each piece of the problem is dealt with separately, Atlanta will only flounder with patchwork measures insufficient to break the spiral. What is needed is a national-scale plan, unified and coordinated from federal to local levels. That plan must start from the most fundamental foundation: housing. Housing cannot be treated as a luxury item or a privilege reserved for those who can afford it. It must be recognized as a basic human right. Building tens of thousands of affordable homes, properly distributed both in the city center and suburbs, will help relieve pressure on the real estate market and create a real escape route for those on the brink of homelessness. Alongside this, addiction treatment and mental health care systems need to be expanded comprehensively. It is not enough to rely on a few overloaded rehab centers or short-term support programs. A tightly linked network between hospitals, rehab facilities, counseling services, and community organizations is necessary to ensure timely admission, long-term monitoring, and chances for reintegration. Resources for this system must be stable, not dependent on short-term budgets easily cut when political priorities shift. However, even with housing and medical services, if the root causes of poverty are not addressed, this loop will continue. That requires comprehensive improvement of economic conditions, raising minimum wages, ensuring access to education and healthcare for all strata, and creating stable employment environments. Only when incomes are sufficient to cover living costs can people escape the risk of losing their homes whenever crises such as illness or job loss occur. The warning is clear: without strong national-level intervention, the cycle of clearing camps, re-establishing camps will continue endlessly. Today, one homeless encampment is dismantled, but just days later, new tents spring up on another street. The death rate from fentanyl will keep rising, not only in Atlanta. Other cities, from the East Coast to the West Coast, will gradually face similar scenarios. In this context, Atlanta is not just a local story. It is a reminder that problems seemingly distant are actually drawing very near. And if the entire system does not act together, from ensuring housing, expanding mental health care, to addressing the root causes of poverty, what is happening here today will become the reality of countless American cities in the near future. Today, Atlanta stands as a powerful wake-up call about what happens when the housing system collapses, public services fail, and human dignity is traded for short-term priorities. When the last shelters close, it means the last chance of survival for thousands is erased. From there, the city loses not only a roof for the vulnerable, but also a part of its collective conscience. This is the moment for immediate action. There is no time to delay. Volunteer, donate, support affordable housing development, and advocate for policies that protect the right to live in safety and dignity. If apathy continues, homeless camps will spiral out of control, already fragile support systems will completely collapse, and the survival of thousands will become more precarious than ever. Amid all this turmoil, Atlanta reflects not only the reality of a single city, but also mirrors the values and challenges of the entire nation. When we place people on equal footing with profit, hope still has room to grow. But if we turn away, what is only a warning today will quickly become reality elsewhere. This is not merely a humanitarian story. It is a stark truth we all must face, not tomorrow, but right now. If you want to continue following authentic, emotional, and deeply human stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Every subscription not only helps the channel grow, but also contributes to spreading awareness and promoting action on urgent social issues. Let's turn concern into the power to change.